Welcome to another episode on the Tiny Hats. I believe last time we stopped off around Christopher Columbus, 1492, Cristobal Colon. You learned all about him, Genoan Jew, and you learned that Ferdinand and Isabel basically made him leave the port the exact same time as the diaspora. 800,000 Jews were forced to leave Spain. So it seems to be a real common denominator with these people to get kicked out of the very host nations that took them in. It's very interesting. So we continue real quick. I want to show you two things. Fantastic book. Tell the Truth and Shame the Devil. I never heard of this book. It's huge. It is packed full of all kinds of tiny hat conspiracies, everything they've been implicated in, all the entire story of World War II, the actual pictures, what was really going on, and how it was rewritten to the version that you know today. We'll be going through this. This is not a part of the Hats Off series, which is actually Chronicon and me going in 50-year segments or so all the way to the present day. That's not what this is. This is going to be standalone videos right here. This will be a few videos here. Also, this huge book, Operation Zion. We're going to be getting into this too, guys. Now that I've got a lot more free time, I'm doing more live videos on Archaics as opposed to doing research uploads, because now that I learned how to use the StreamYard software, I'm able to do research uploads as I'm doing a live video, and that doesn't require any time for me to do a lot of preparation. So I'm actually freeing more time for Archaics TV by not having to spend so much time on YouTube. So it's all a learning curve for me, guys. So we're gonna start this right off. 1494. If you're following in Chronicon, there's going to be a lot of things I mentioned that are not in Chronicon, because I have the updated final Chronicon right here before me, and it's not been released to the public yet. It's got some final editings to go through, but it's really good. Shiva Shampoo is a part of this project. Don Kush was a part of this project. Babette spearheaded this project. It's a really good version of Chronicon. It's very neat. They spent almost a year and a half going through all the numbers, checking the dates, going fact checking, making sure the bibliographic citations were all in order, matching the text. The version of Chronicon is very good, guys. But like I said, if you're following in Chronicon, there's going to be I've got a lot of new pieces that were inserted. So let's get to it. In the calendrics, the year 1494. This is the year the Sephardic Jews used a printing press to produce copies of the Hebrew Old Testament, the first 5 books. What is it called? The Torah, the Pentateuch, I don't know how to say it. With commentaries. Now, the Jews they were immigrants in a Muslim country. This is reported by a Jewish scholar named Daniel Borston on page 543 of his book, The Discoverers. Now, what we have here is in 1494, 2 years after a Jew named Columbus supposedly discovered America, which is bullshit. But 2 years after that, all of a sudden, the Old Testament Jewish version is mass produced by printing press. Remember this, guys. Most of Europe at this time didn't even know the Old Testament stories. So here we have the printing press mass producing the Pentateuch, whatever, Pentateuch, whatever it's pronounced. The I just know of it as the Torah, the first 5 books with commentaries. Now, this was 54 years. They acted fast. This was 54 years after the invention of the printing blocks and the press. Remember, it wasn't by Gutenberg. Gutenberg's the one that ended up stealing it, and he became famous for inventing it. But the true inventor is Coster of Haarlem. Yeah, uh, he's the one that did it, and that was in the year 1440. That's Fibonacci number 144 times 10. So this is our first entry, and it's interesting because remember, it's almost like we're in a Jewish simulation. This is a Jewish version, a version of reality that's a literal fulfillment to the promises in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, where the demon from the burning bush told the Jews basically, you're going to inherit this, and this if you do this, and this, and this. Well, the Jews have done that. They've become human haters. They're absolutely vile. They're infiltrators of culture, the rewriters of history books. They've basically been given the finances of the world, in charge of the world banks, in charge of Hollywood. All the things that were promised to them from the demon on the burning bush on Mount Sinai have been given to them, and they're in this world now. Well, so this is interesting that in 1494, the Sephardic Jews begin mass producing the Old Testament books. This is interesting because this is exactly 612 years before Armageddon, the 6,000th year, the year that the chief cornerstone descends to finalize the book of life, known as the Great Pyramid, every stone a soul of man. This 612-year period is 7,344 months. Here is another reference to the Exodus, the removal of a population from the construct. Remember, the Jews accepted the contract. They never accepted a contract that ever promised them eternal life. They didn't. That was the contract given to the Israelites. They accepted that. The Jews didn't. Go back and read Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Read the law. You will find out there is not a single promise anywhere in the promises of Yahweh to Moses on Mount Sinai, delivered to the Jews and Israelites, not a single promise of an afterlife. Everything was for good crop, good work, and subduing your enemies and inheriting the wealth of the world. That's the promises, guys. They signed that contract. And here it is 612 years, 7,344 months. Do you remember the relevancy of that number? The apophthegm on the Great Pyramid, the sloping distance from the bottom all the way to the top is 7,344 pyramid inches. The distance in time from the beginning of this simulated context, which is the Anunnaki Ner calendar, which started in 5239 BC, counting 7,344 years, is exactly 2106 AD, the 6,000th year of the Annus Mundi calendar, when the chief cornerstone descends upon the monument of man, called Armageddon. You can't make this stuff up, guys. These dates are all written in stone in all my published books and all my research. To find it also mentioned here is another reference to people being removed from the construct. Here it is. 612 years before Armageddon is 7,344 months. 7,344 is 2448 times 3. In the ancient world, the year 2448 Annus Mundi was the Exodus event. Exodus out of Egypt. What does the book of Revelation say? It specifically says that the world in the apocalypse, in the tribulation, is called two things. It's called Sodom and it's called Egypt. Yeah, this is all about two groups. One group has signed the contract. They're trapped in the sim. This is why they have perfected all this genius for evil. This is who they are. Over and over, they keep looping back, looping back, looping back. They serve the contract. They and their descendants. This is why when Jesus was being crucified in the narrative, Pilate washed his hands, addressed the Jews, and the Jews responded, "Let his blood be on our heads and on the heads of our children forever and ever." They knew. They've already signed the contract. They're trapped in the They're in a loop. This is what they chose. They chose to inherit the world while other souls come here, grow, mature, go through some fucked up stuff. But at the 7,344th year each time, they go. They get to escape the construct because they're pilgrims. They're sojourners. This is who you are. This is who I am. But it's not who the Jews are. It's all in the numbers, guys. So we moved to 1496, just 2 years later. In the year 1496, the Jews are expelled from Portugal. Well, and in Naples. So here's two more governments. Here are two more monarchies that have fought, that have basically said, well, fuck. Spain, the kingdoms of Aragon and Castile got away with it. Shoot, they went ahead and did the same thing too. Why? Because you don't just deport a whole ethnicity of people within your kingdom unless they're really effing up. So the Jews must have been coin clipping and involved in all kinds of financial schemes in Portugal also, and in northern Italy, in Naples, for this to have happened. Yeah. They're getting run out of everywhere. Man, I got this fan on high. I might need to turn this fan off. So this is 1496. They got run out of those two countries. This is out of a book on page 199 called Jewish Supremacism. A really good book. A lot of my data comes from that book too, along with Synagogue of Satan by Andrew Carrington Hitchcock. They tried to kill that man several times. He may have been killed by now. I haven't heard from him in a long time. But 1 year later is 1497. In the year 1497 CE, Amerigo Vespucci explored South American coast for about 2 years until 1499. The Italian navigator's name is a coincidence that caused an error to be published in the year 1507, claiming that the Americas were named after Amerigo, which is totally untrue. John Cabot, an Italian navigator famous for bringing the first Europeans to North American shores, excluding, the earlier Vikings, the Goths, and the Phoenicians, the Libyans, who sailed from Bristol, England, to North America. Interestingly, in 1955, a letter was found among the Spanish government archives written by John Day of Bristol, England, to the person of Christopher Columbus. This letter specifically mentioned a map of North America. Yeah, guys, this is all. North America was well known by this time. It was well known. Also, Leonardo da Vinci drew a sketch of a man-powered flying machine in this year. But what's really compelling about all this the information in this book on page 349, Ancient Mysteries and Zechariah Sitchin, Wars of Gods and Men, and the Pyramid Wars, page 159, is that these guys are showing evidence that navigators before the days of Amerigo Vespucci were already calling lands in the West by the name of America because it's the name of a Western navigational star. So that's really interesting. It was like an overall designation for any unknown lands that were to the west that can only be found by following the star America. Not America. It starts with an M, America. All right. So the Amerigo Vespucci deal, completely untrue. It's just untrue. He didn't name the Americas. So 1498, the calendrics for this year are pretty good too. This is Vasco da Gama of Portugal sailed from Europe all the way around Africa, across the Arabian Sea, Indian Ocean to arrive in Calicut, a voyage unrivaled and overshadowing even that of Columbus, because it was a successful route to the spice trade nations of Asia that the Spanish and the Portuguese desperately sought, to the perils and inflation of the land based trade routes that the Jews maintained secret monopolies on. Guys, historians admit that the Spanish in the crown, the Genoans, the Portuguese, all these Europeans were desperately trying to find ways by sea to get to India. so they can engage in the spice trade. And the reason why they wanted to do it is because the overland routes were all controlled by Jews. Remember what I told you in prior presentations? The Jews were already internationally networked from India, the whole Middle East, Arabia, Palestine, Egypt, almost all the Mediterranean, into Europe, into Southern Asia. The Jews, they had everything sewed up. They owned all the shipping guilds. They owned all the slaver markets. Yeah, people do not realize just how much these people controlled in the ancient world and why all these kingdoms and empires run them out. It's over and over and over. But you don't read in the history books about the contention between the crown and the international Jewish spice trade. You don't hear about that. You just hear about the discoverers making all these inroads, discovering different sea routes on how to get to places. You don't hear about the real politics. The real politics was basically anti Semitic. We needed to find something, man, to get away from these Jews who are overcharging us for these spices. I shaved this morning, guys, and I think that razor hit me. The razor nicked me. After I shave with a razor and shaving cream, I hit all this up with a trimmer, but it doesn't have a guard on it. And sometimes I can go a little too far. I get a little excited listening to my metal music. Be dancing in my underwear in front of the mirror shaving. I get a little excited and nick myself. So Da Gama's voyage permanently linked the Far East to the West by sea for the very first time in recorded history and gave immense maritime power to the Portuguese Empire. This accomplishment would have been much later in history had not Henry the Navigator first laid down the foundation of Portuguese explorations of the world's oceans and seas and built a fantastic navy. So, in this year, also, the Jews are expelled from Nuremberg, Germany. Here it is again, another expulsion. History doesn't really record a whole lot of the details, but you can pretty much ascertain why the Germans were getting pissed. It's always financial. So, the calendrics are interesting because it involves India, and this is precisely 46 centuries, 4,600 years of the Vedic calendar of India. That's not a coincidence. Major events always fall on major times in calendars. 46 centuries, that's double, that's two zeros. It wasn't 4,602, it wasn't 4,601, it wasn't 4,599. It was precisely 46 centuries when India was connected to Europe by sea. And it was the Portuguese. This was also the 972nd year of the Anno Domini calendar. This is the year 1498, but remember, the Anno Domini calendar didn't start till later. So this is 972 Anno Domini. I believe 972 Anno Domini is 108, the ancient holy number of India. 108 times 9. 972. The calendrics always give us additional details. This is what I'm always hammering into you guys. You guys already know, though. Those are my veterans here. You already know. The calendrics give you more information than the actual historical texts do. So the year 1500 rolls around. All right, 1500. We're still talking about 623 years ago. So it's a long time, guys. So the year 1500 rolls around. At least 26 comets are reported between 1500 and 1543. That's a lot of comets. 26 comets to be seen at a period of time when there's very few telescopes. The next year, 1501. That's military historian William Brambly who recorded that fact. 1501. Italian navigator Amerigo Vespucci sailed from Lisbon, Portugal, across the Atlantic with the intention of sailing beyond the islands Columbus discovered, which is Cuba. This he did, sailing the South American coastline for 2,400 miles and then returning to Lisbon in 1502. So this is just it just shows that at the beginning of the 16th century, the 1500s, at the very beginning of the 1500s, for the first time, Europe is starting to understand just how gigantic South America is. He never made it all the way around South America. He sailed 2,400 miles of its coast before he turned around and went back to Portugal to report what he found. Yeah, they're just realizing how big the world is. 1502, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella required the Catholic bishops to inspect all books and written works on sale or available throughout Spain. This explains why Nostradamus' secret cache or prophetic Hebrew books had remained unknown. Nostradamus was born in 1503, and in 1558, the penalty of death was death or confiscation of all property for possession of any illegal books. So this is the Encyclopedia of World Facts and Dates, page 208. Guys, you have to understand, I've done a lot of research and read many different translations on Nostradamus' quatrains. And one thing Nostradamus was very clear about in his letters to his son Caesar, he's specifically said that he did not divine these things. He pulled out his prophetic material from an immense library that he had to hide. And once the information was safely in the centuries, his prophetic books, the prophecies of Nostradamus, he then burned that library. But it was a measure of protection because had he or his family ever been caught with those books, then something terrible would have happened because Nostradamus was Jewish. The prophet Michel del Nostradome was French by culture, but he was Jewish. So well, he's actually French by nationality, but by culture he was Jewish. 1503, Michel de Nostradome, or Nostradamus, is born to Jewish parents who had converted to Catholicism in France, fearing the Inquisition. He is destined to be the most popular prophet ever, and for good reason. In this year, in this year, a windstorm dislodged a huge chunk of rock from a high mountain overlooking the sea at Naples, Italy. Inside the rock was found the amazing fossil of a primordial ship, and the spectators took note that the vessel was nothing like the ships of their time. An Italian historian and statesman named Giovanni Potano was one of the many witnesses who studied this amazing ship. For other buried ships from antiquity, see the years 1460 and 1540. That's all very interesting. I do have, but I do have they're in Chronicon. I have two other ships that were found under mountains and all that in extreme circumstances, and I have a fourth one that's been found in the west in the Rockies, and I posted it on Facebook. A lot of people ridiculed it and they laughed at it. The post on Facebook, but I didn't feel like telling them, look, I got one from 1460, I got one from 1503, I got one from 1540. All of them are all different. There's ships that have been found inside caverns or underground in mountains and hollows. There's also a ship that's been found in Death Valley with skeletons still chained to it. And in the 1800s, Indians used to walk people way out there in the middle of Death Valley to show them this ship. That's a fourth one. I have a fifth one in the mountains of Greece. There's a fossilized ship way towards the top of a mountain, which is explained by the great tsunamis of 365 AD, which were mentioned by Ammianus Marcellinus in his book. But and there's a sixth or a seventh ship that was located far out in the Sahara Desert, and the Berbers used to take people out there for a fee and show them a ship that was just halfway buried in the desert, and it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles inland. So yeah, it's people can laugh and scoff at all these things all they want, but they don't realize how many times this has happened. how many of these discoveries have been preserved in the historical record. So anyway, that was the year 1503. Let's go to 1506. In the year 1506, our hero, the Jewish explorer who discovered America, died. His name is Cristobal Colon. He dies alone and penniless. He is absolutely broke in 1506 when he died, completely fallen out of royal favor while others continued his explorations. He claimed to have discovered a new route to China, not knowing that the American continents blocked his passage, as well as an entire other body of water, the Pacific Ocean. So while the Portuguese are really finding waterways to India, this Jewish navigator couldn't find shit. But he went down in history as the greatest of all discoverers. How did that happen? How did that happen? The Genoans and the Portuguese are the ones that found the trade routes. They made it to India. They sailed around South America. Vespucci learned how big South America was. How is it that Christopher Columbus went down in history as the greatest of all navigators? And I'm going to tell you what happened. Because he's Jewish. It's as simple as that. There is no way else around it. When all the publishers in the world are owned by Jewish people, they get to write who gets to be famous and not. He died broke and he died penniless. There's nothing to celebrate about this dude. Nothing. So, also in this year of 1506, Pope Julius II began construction on St. Peter's Cathedral. It is 450 feet wide, 700 feet long, 150 feet floor to ceiling. That's excluding the dome. The ceiling of the dome was 360 feet, taller than a 30-story skyscraper. Guys, this construction on this began in 1506. It began in 1506. The infrastructure to build this was 30 stories, guys. That's amazing for this period of time. So here, you just can't make this stuff up, guys, because I need you to understand the calendrics show just how incredible this building is. First of all, this building, St. Peter's Cathedral, construction began, foundation began one Anunnaki Ner before Armageddon, exactly 600 years before 2106 AD, when the real chief cornerstone comes, not a Masonic not a Masonic cornerstone that was put in St. Peter's Cathedral, but the real chief cornerstone descends upon the monument of man in 2106 AD, 600 years after this building was started. Here's what's interesting: 1506 AD is the year 5400 Annus Mundi. 5400 Annus Mundi is precisely 108 jubilees, 50 years each. 5400 is also 100 times 108. There's that 108 number again, shows everywhere up in the Great Pyramid. Now, this year of 1506 is also the year 5814 of the Phoenix phenomenon calendar. 5814 is the height of the Great Pyramid in Egypt, 5,814 inches high once the cornerstone is in place. Right now, it's 5,448 inches because it's got a flat top on it. Well, once the cornerstone's set on top of it, the bin stone, the real bin stone, the chief cornerstone, it becomes 5,814 inches. I've gone through this many times on my channel and in my published books. These are not my measurements. All these measurements are taken by other researchers. Now, that's the Phoenix. That's a Phoenix phenomenon. But here's where it's crazier. Here's where it gets. Remember, it's attached to the idea of the Phoenix now. The cathedral is attached to the idea of Phoenix. So This is also 4,320 years Anno Pyramid, meaning it's 4,320 years since the Great Pyramid was finished. The Great Pyramid. 432. 4,320 years is Fibonacci. It's golden proportion. Spiral number. It's 144 times, oh, let's see, 144 times 3. It's 144 times 30. Can't make this stuff up, guys. The calendrics are amazing. And as far as the Egyptian Christian Coptic calendar, this is the year 1242. Why is that relevant? Because 1242 is divisible by 138. It's a Phoenix number. And it's a Christian calendar. What is this? This is a Catholic structure of masonry. So it's connected to the Phoenix. It's connected to Christianity. It's connected to the chief cornerstone of the Great Pyramid. The calendrics are amazing. But what's even crazier is that it took 120 years to build that structure. 120. There's the foundation of time number. Noah's given 120 years before the Great Flood. Moses was 120 years old. It comes up over and over and over. Remember, 40 is the number of trial and testing, but 40 times 3 is 120. 120 comes up everywhere in the Bible, over and over. But what's crazy is that this 30-story religious structure, encoding the number 360 feet in the dome at the top, was finished in the Phoenix year of 1626 AD. That's on the 138-year timeline. It was finished on that Phoenix year. That is not by accident. Not by accident, guys. Remember, this was begun by the popes, Pope Julius II, St. Peter's Cathedral. Now, for those of you who don't know, I have a video on YouTube. It's still there. It's in the Phoenix Phenomenon playlist. In that playlist, there is a video specifically called St. Peter's Cathedral in the Phoenix 2040. Watch that video and look at all the coding that's in that cathedral and its calendrics that basically identify the year 2040 as the message of that cathedral. Yeah, it's great. It's amazing stuff, guys. So we can get to the next year of 1507. In 1507, Martin Waldseemüller published his world map, which was the first to chart the longitude and latitude with precision, this being 144,000 days before its rediscovery in 1901 in Wolfegg Castle in Germany. That is so bizarre. This man went through all this trouble to draw a map of the world and get the longitude and the latitude almost perfect. And then it's lost for 395 years, which is 144,000 days, before it's all of a sudden rediscovered in 1901, the final year of a Phoenix timeline of 138 years, because 1902 began the next 138 years. 1902, that's on the Phoenix timeline. So this world map by Waldseemüller, it had been formerly owned by an astronomer and geographer, Johannes Schoner of Nuremberg, but it had been lost. The globe and wall maps Waldseemüller made in 1507 were the first to call the western continents America. America. This is published in a really good book called 1421. I can't remember who wrote it. I just talked about this book the other day. It's mainly about China, but 1421. Waldseemüller published in his Cosmographie Introduction to Cosmography, that these western continents were named after Amerigo Vespucci. But this was a mistake. The book was an instant success, and the error is still propagated to this day. Sailors referred to unknown western lands as America long before this, and the Americas were named after a western navigational star called Merica. Merika. America. This is in a book called The Hiram Key, page 290 and page 291. I don't make this stuff up, guys. You just find it in old books and tell you. So, moving to 1508. Guys, the closer we get to our day, I'm not skipping any years. I have data for almost every single year. So skipping years through the 1500s, you're going to see, and maybe through some of the 1600s. But once we get to the mid 1700s, it's every year, guys. Chronicons got something for every year. And like I said, these we have a lot of tiny hat videos to go through. There's a lot of data to cover because these videos are getting longer and longer. This video is going to be about 3 hours, but it's still covering less and less time because there's more and more data. Hmm. All right, we get to the year 1508. In 1508 AD, sweating sickness returned to England, killing many people before vanishing in the fall. So this is interesting because it's 2,220 years since the calendar change in 713 BC, when the calendar changed from 360 perfect days to 365.24 days. So uh, this is, I believe this is 666 times 5. This is 2,220 years. May not mean anything. The calendrics are interesting, but that's as far as it goes. 1 year later is 1509. Remember, Nostradamus, by this time, Nostradamus is 6 years old. 1509. In 1509, King Henry VIII became the King of England. Also in 1509, in Rouen, France, is unearthed the skeleton of a gigantic human that stood 17 foot tall. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. The book Discovering Ancient Giants, page 17, is the one that talks about that. 1510. In 1510 AD, this is interesting here, guys, because the Jews are expelled from Prussia. So here we have a European country. And remember, guys, we haven't really gone into the detail. It's an independent series. I'm doing it not on YouTube. I'm doing it on Archaics TV. I'm going to give you the series that I started on YouTube, but it's toxic. It's toxic because there's a lot of people who have access to YouTube that won't come to Archaics TV, and that's fine. That's why I'd rather do it on Archaics TV. But if I'm going to give you the business on the actual Israelites, their identity, how they made it to Europe, who they became, their actual records proving their where they came from and who they were. I got to do that on Archaics TV because you got whole populations of people in society. They're going to get really triggered because I have the receipts. The notes are phenomenal. Maybe one day in the future I'll put it all in a book or something. But for now, I'm going to have another series independent of the Tiny Hat series for Archaics TV that just shows you from the very beginning all the Israelite migrations into the European countries they are today, because that's who took the Jews in. The descendants of Israelite tribes that become Israelite countries that became Israelite empires. They had forgotten, according to the Old Testament prophecy, they would forget who they were. They would lose track of their identity. But the Jews would never lose sight who they were. The Jews would always know who they were. And that's why they were always at war with them, always trying to enslave them. And I have many, many, many quotes from Jewish historians, Jewish books, Jewish scholars that all admit that the Europeans are the descendants of the lost 10 tribes of Israel. We're going to get to it in Archaics TV because I'm preparing all this now. Like I said, I'm really excited about all my projects. It's just taking time to launch each individual one while I'm going through some madness on YouTube with some other guys who are just out of there. Yeah, man, the whole deal with Bro Sanchez was just so awkward. So awkward. I went to bed after that first video. I went to bed that night thinking, oh, everything was okay. No one heard a complaint out of me. I never complained to Bro Sanchez. I never complained to anybody in the public. I never said anything. I went to bed that night. That video did not go the way I intended. I wanted to present on the Great Pyramid. I didn't know that dude was just going to unleash a whole bunch of Photoshop stuff. These pictures aren't even real. Nowhere in the world do you find a Leventa Olmec head on top of a pyramid. He showed me that picture. I was shocked. I was like, wow, that's Photoshop. Nowhere in the world does that exist. So I'm It shocked me. So, you know what? I thought the video went good though. And then the next day, I saw that Bro Sanchez released another video. This time, it had my name in the title. It looked like, oh, to people that I was going to be involved, and a lot of people came to listen to it. I looked at it. As soon as I turned it on, I read the chat. The chat was toxic. People attacking Dawn, people attacking me. Oh man, I'm gonna hold you responsible for your community. Anybody I do collaborations with, if you can't control your community, I'm gonna hold you responsible. My community, Archaics, is tight. We respect everybody, and even when we disagree. Remember Ben Davidson? Ben Davidson, who I totally 100% disagree about everything because he uses NASA data, one of the most, come on, man, intelligence agency that puts out misinformation every single day, and we pay them to do it, the taxes. And Ben Davidson is on my channel, and he was treated with the utmost respect. He was respected in the chat. The few people who got triggered about me having a uniformitarian on my channel, man, were silenced until the end of the video. But I go on Bro Sanchez and I get lit the fuck up over and over and over by all these people being attacked. His moderators are just freely allowing people to attack. Now, if you go watch those videos and look at some of that chat, you're not going to see a lot of that because they've been real busy covering up some of that stuff. They've eliminated many comments that Dawn had made have been taken off. So they've sanitized a lot of this because they don't want to. They don't want to. I guess they don't want the controversy. I don't know, but I know this. After that second video, seeing all that, Bro Sanchez sent me an email. I read the email and I didn't see apology in the email. All I saw was if I offended you, I'm sorry. If and I'm reading it, it's like, man, it's like toxic. This email I got. I'm like, you know what? It's just a different way of dealing with people. It's a different culture, different way. You know what? Just said, you know what's no big deal. It's exactly what I told him in the email. Hey man, it's no big deal. He said, I'm gonna move on. I'm cool, man. And I basically severed our relationship. I didn't do it rude. I wasn't messy. And then he released a third video that was messy as hell. His community was getting messy. And now all of a sudden, everybody's speaking for me. Not one time have I made a public statement. He's speaking for me, basically twisting around everything. I never said any of these things. I've never said any of these things. And then these two girls that hate Dawn are just blowing his chat up. So even Mr. Sanchez takes what they said at face value, that Dawn's controlling me, that Dawn's the reason all this is happening. You know what? It's gossip. Now I got a content creator putting out videos of me and attacking the woman I'm with based off what these two hating ass girls in the chat are saying. So there's no fact checking here. It's all emotion. 3 videos go by like this before I decide to make a public statement to my own community saying, hey guys, I'm really disenchanted with the Bro Sanchez community and here's why. And I did that. And I got everybody in my community we've supported and they look. And then all of a sudden, man, his community acting like they're victims and I attacked them. Absolute bullshit. So he releases the fourth video. His fourth video is exposing my criminal history. Well, get in line. There's 30 channels that exposed my criminal history, and not one of those channels fared well for doing it. Not one of them. Told people from the beginning, I am an unstoppable engine, and I am going to transmute all that hostility into positivity. I'm going to grow my channel, and people are basically intelligent, and they're going to see what's happening, and they're going to get on board. And that is exactly what happened out of this situation. I never went public with anything messy. This was an entire contrived problem right from his community, straight from him, that he exacerbated and he blew up and he suffered the consequences for it because he lost a lot of subs, he lost a lot of face. There's a lot of people who no longer look at him the way they used to. And that's not my fault, nor is it my problem, nor do I care. I moved on. Moved on. But yeah, I'm gonna hey, it actually helps me when people attack me because people who with a modicum of intellect then come to my channel to see what all the hubbub is about, and then they see things on my channel that are mind expanding, and they hang around. After 2 or 3 weeks, they sub to my channel. I got no problem with that. I ain't got no problem with that. What I really need is about 20 channels to all network together, and explain why you hate Jason and why you hate Archaics. That would totally benefit me because In all things that I do, I recognize the wisdom of P.T. Barnum. P.T. Barnum said it best. It doesn't matter what they say about you as long as they spell your name right. Yeah. So let's move on, guys. I'm good with that whole situation. I'm good with my ability to move on. I mean, it would be nothing for me to put out a fantastic video with a whole bunch of shots and get all messy. And but why? Why? Why do it? I'm better than that. Mm. So in 1510, the Jews are expelled from Russia. Also in this year, well, yeah, I got to talk about one thing though. The Jews being expelled from Prussia is interesting because this is the year five. Well, this is the year 1554 of the Greek Syrian Seleucid calendar. Now this was a civilization that had basically been overrun by Jews, but so 1554 years is 777 plus 777 years. So you remember that number seven? That number seven intrinsically belongs to the Jewish culture. It is the Sabbath. Jewish culture borrowed it from Babylon. Basically, Babylonia and the Jews have become one. Yeah, the spirit of Babylon is carried out in basically Zionism. So, also in this year of 1510, the Aztecs are alarmed when the water in the lake of New Mexico began to boil. A bright comet was seen in the skies and was considered an evil omen, according to historian Sahagun. Also in this year of 1510, the Italian adventurer Ludovico Govarthama disguised himself as a Mamluk, one of the Christian convert slaves turned Muslim, and visited Mecca in Arabia, which is forbidden to non Muslims. He is the first to do so. He returned to Italy and wrote a book about his adventure. Now, I never can find a book when I want to find it, but somewhere up on my bookshelf, guys, I have a Quran from 1801. There are no sutras. There's no four versions. You know how we got four versions in the Quran today? I have a copy of the Quran from 1801. It's translated in the King's English. I'm reading it, and it's not separated in chapters. It doesn't have any sutras. It is from the back of the book to the beginning of the book, one solid content. And it's not subdivided into four sections like all Qurans today. Quran has been tampered with. As a matter of fact, the original Qurans that were in existence after Muhammad don't even exist anymore. Any Umayyad versions were destroyed a long time ago, and the Babylonian Abbasid version replaced it, which took away the holy city of Petra and replaced it with the unholy city of Mecca, where the black cube is. Got all the whole Muslim world praying to the black cube. Yeah. So this is that's an interesting account. They could have boiled him alive. They could have burned him at the stake, chopped off his head, chopped off his members, fed him to the lions if he would have been caught. Yeah, he's a European who snuck into Mecca and got to see that ceremony. So also in 1510, the date of letter from Henry Cornelius Agrippa to the famous abbot Trithmithius. I told you guys I'm a fan of Trithmithius. He was a chronologist. He was also a mathematician, a historian, a philosopher. So this is the date of a letter to Trithmithius from Henry Cornelius Agrippa, one of the greatest occult historians of all time. So Agrippa was actually his student, the student of Trithmithius, and Nostradamus studied both Henry Cornelius Agrippa and Trithmithius. So let's move on to the year 1513. 610 years ago. Or no, excuse me, it's less than that. But 1513. Vasco Nunez de Balboa. We've all read about him. We heard about him in high school and in junior high. He discovered the Pacific Ocean by crossing the Isthmus of Panama in Spain's objective to find a sea route to the Spice Islands in Asia. Also in this year, Ponce de Leon embarked on a mission to find the island of Bimini. The official reason was to secure precious metals, but it was since been discovered that the Spanish are also on the hunt for the legendary Fountain of Youth, a story related by the local Native Americans over and over again. So in 1513, Ponce de Leon discovered the coast of Florida, thinking it was merely an island. The Turkish navigator, formerly a Muslim pirate but now known to be Jewish, named Piri Reis, compiled his most famous 1513 map using 20 older maps. This map shows the South American coast and part of Antarctica before it was covered in ice. This is very important, guys, because this is more evidence of vapor canopy phenomenon. The Phoenix phenomenon brings the vapor canopy. The vapor canopy is the polar caps melted to provide all the fresh water in the mesosphere, which blocks out the sun, which is part of the Phoenix phenomenon. Now, when vapor canopies collapse, they instantly at the poles freeze. That's where you get your 2 mile high ice cap of packed snow. It doesn't take hundreds of thousands of years or 500,000 years like uniformitarian science tries to teach us. It doesn't take that. And this is the reason why today there are 60 different ice age theories. Because every time a new ice age theory is published and peer reviewed, more scientists come to the forefront explaining why this version of the theory can't be true either. They can't get around the humidity factor. There's no humidity in the Antarctic. There's no humidity in the Arctic. This is why it does not snow. When you see pictures of the Arctic and Antarctic and you see these deep snows, it's all Hollywood bullshit. Because scientists know there's only a 1/2 inch of snow per year in the Arctic and Antarctic because there's zero humidity. So it would have taken millions of years for all that ice pack 2 miles high in snow, but that's not the case. The true story is the Phoenix phenomenon creates the vapor canopy to instantly collapse. As the mesosphere instantly collapses around the equatorial belt, it's torrential flooding and rain. At the 30 degrees to 50 degrees latitude mark, north and south of the equator, it's just rain. It rains about 40 days, but it's just rain as the mesosphere collapses. But anything north of the 65th parallel is snow. It creates ice cap, ice pack almost instantly. So all the ice core dating, all that shit is falsified. Every bit of it is absolutely untrue. So this is the existence of the Piri Reis map, which was a Jewish navigator who had 20 older maps to put this together. The very existence of 550-year-old maps and older that show Antarctica ice free, where we can even see the rivers, the plains, and the mountains on the maps exactly where satellites show them to be, is absolute proof that there was no snow and ice when those maps were made. And because maps are not going to survive more than 2 or 3 centuries, we know we're looking at a vapor canopy that collapsed somewhere 200 to 300 years before Christopher Columbus got a hold of those maps. It's as simple as that. So Antarctica is depicted on the Piri Reis maps as two land masses, and this is a fact that was not scientifically known until 1958. 1958 is when NASA was started, and it was also the first year that we got scientific proof that Antarctica is not one continent, but two, and they're completely separate. But it's on the Piri Reis map, which is impossible because it's under 2 miles of ice. So, oh, that's our summary for 1513. That's the Piri Reis map. Anybody wants to know more about the Piri Reis map? Oh, Professor Charles Hapgood, I have it in my library right here. It is a book called Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings. It's awesome, but it goes into a lot of detail about the Piri Reis map. So now we get to the year 1514. Pope Leo X published a whole list of sins in a book that could be paid for in the form of indulgences for the public. This means the Roman Church would forgive the sinner his or her trespass, and those forgiven had to pay the prices that were published in the book. This unbelievable system led to the sale of indulgences and was the fiery controversy that lit the Reformation period. So Voltaire, the French historian philosopher Voltaire, he wrote that the Roman Church later tried to suppress the book to conceal this history, but it did not succeed. Too many people already had copies. The Roman Catholic Church literally created a program where they could sell to you the permission to indulge in certain sinful acts if you just paid the priest a fee. Wow. That's in a book called The Portable Voltaire, page 120. The year 1517, the Ottoman Turks occupying Egypt removed the last of the white limestone casing blocks from the surface of the Great Pyramid for rebuilding materials, inadvertently leaving behind basement level attached blocks lying in situ that would be discovered by the British in the year 1837 by Colonel Howard Weiss's archaeological team. This is 320 years in the future. Those blocks survived because the Muslim Turkish extraction engineers had left all that rubble on the bottom and didn't try to clean it out to find some blocks that were still in situ. Great Pyramid of sand colored limestone blocks is not the monument's original condition. The first white smooth blocks on the facing were removed in 1356 after an earthquake. The Ottoman administration takes over Jerusalem and would occupy the ancient city for exactly 400 years until taken by the British in the year 1917. This is the subject matter of the Balfour Declaration. Now, sweating sickness returns to England, killing about 400 students at Oxford University among the many thousands that it claimed on October 31st. Oh, now Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses on the door of the All Saints Church in Wittenberg, Germany. Martin Luther accidentally discovered a Latin Bible among the books of the university, a book he had never before seen. The Holy Writ in those days was jealously guarded by the Roman Church, often chained to podiums and only in the possession of the clergy. Portions of the Gospels and epistles were known particularly because they were read to the people, but the entire Bible was unknown to him. By studying the scriptures in private, his eyes were opened to the fallacies of the Roman church doctrines and practices, and he dedicated his life and energies to exposing their duplicity. For those of you who don't know, the Reformation was basically spearheaded by this document called the 95 Theses. This was 95 errors published by Martin Luther that the Roman Catholic Church was concealing. 1519. In the year 1519, Aztec Emperor Montezuma II's sister, Princess Consine, dreamt of strange white men from across the sea. When reports came in that strange white men had appeared out of the great eastern sea, Montezuma was afraid and opposed the idea of open conflict with them. Now remember, this is just a few years after the strange omens and the boiling water and the strange star that appeared that scared the Aztecs. So Hernan Cortez of Spain arrived in Mexico on April 22nd, which happened to be the precise date on the Mexican calendar that ended a 52-year cycle on the day predicted to be the return of the god Quetzalcoatl. This was the day 9 wind on a one reed year. So what had happened is every 52 years, which is called the calendar round, Every 52 years, on a certain day, the Aztecs watch with anticipation the sky to see if a certain god is going to appear. It happened to be on this date that Hernan Cortez appears. And it just so happened that the Aztecs believed that Quetzalcoatl was a bearded god, which is very unusual because the Aztecs themselves could not grow any facial hair. So here we have this bearded Hernan Cortez of Spain appearing on the exact date that they were expecting a god to appear. So the Spanish were in no way able to overcome the mighty Aztec Empire by force nor by disease. It was done by the Aztec fear that the Spanish were indeed sent by the divine. The Spanish conquistadors tricked Montezuma and took the palace, leading to the fall of the Aztec Empire in its 40th year. Some of you guys believe that the Aztecs were around for a long period of time. They weren't. There were a whole bunch of loosely confederated families and tribes, and then all of a sudden, the stronger, more dominant one, the Azteca began solidifying by conquering all the other ones, and the Aztec Empire fell in its 40th year. In this year also, Ferdinand Magellan defected from Portugal to Spain because the Portuguese refused to give him ships and provisions to find a route around America to the Spice Islands in Asia. His fleet set sail towards South America, named the San Antonio, the Victoria, Concepcion, Santiago, and his flagship, the Trinidad. Magellan's circumnavigation of the world was 96 years after the Chinese treasure fleets had already done it in 1421. On May 2nd, in the court of King Francois the First of France, Leonardo da Vinci died. That's in 1519. That's a lot happened in 1519. Our heroes here, the tiny hats, very quiet during these years. 1520. In the year 1520, Hernan Cortez visited the ancient site of the mysterious city of Teotihuacan, a buried metropolis of immense ruins regarded as a city of the dead by the local Aztecs 25 miles northwest of Mexico City. Enormous pyramids and temple complexes were buried beneath tons of earth and trees growing atop mounds that attested to the antiquity of the monuments. The Spanish excavated the site and studied the Pyramid of the Sun, which stands 203 feet high. 203 feet high, guys. Intriguingly, the Mexican pyramid site parallels the Egyptian Giza site in a unique way. The Great Pyramids are off alignment noticeably with the third and much smaller pyramid, and this feature is replicated perfectly at Teotihuacan. The Great Pyramid is not 203 feet high, though. It is 203 levels of block, horses, which denoted a standard uniform method of measurement shared between them. So, also in this year, Sultan Selim the Grim died. His achievement being that he virtually unified the Muslim world under the Turkish Ottoman Empire after conquering Persia, Syria, and Egypt. Suleiman, also known as Solomon, began to rule from Baghdad to Hungary. Baghdad is just a modern name for Babylon. Remember Alexander the Great? He ruled Babylon. Remember the Muslim Abbasids? They changed the holy city from Petra to Baghdad, which is Babylon. 1521. In the year 1521 AD, Magellan rounded the Cape of South America through treacherous waters and a little exploration and sailed into the unknown waters of the Pacific Ocean after one of his ships mutinied. He finally landed in Guam, but he was killed by the islanders. Ponce de Leon explored Florida on a secret mission for the Spanish crown to find the location of the Fountain of Youth. that was believed to be connected to a river that rejuvenated the old. Unfortunately for Ponce, the quest ended with an Indian arrow. Yeah, man, you spent Magellan and Ponce de Leon both died on these missions. 1524, and the calendrics again get interesting. Hold on, real quick. Okay, 1524. About 1,000 women accused of witchcraft were all killed at Como, Italy, and France was burning witches by the thousands. Savoy condemned 800 women at one time. Much of the Christian European world awaiting a terrible flood that was predicted to occur in this year by the famous mathematician Stoffler. This prediction was based on astrology from an unusual planetary conjunction in Pisces, the fish. People made preparations for the disaster, and many others built arks, bought boats, and some sold off their property and possessions. Nothing ever came of it, and this was 476 years before the Y2 scare of 1999 and the year 2000, and the doomsday predictions of Richard Noon in his book 55-2000 Ice the Ultimate Disaster. Voltaire wrote that many people grew very rich from the 1524 AD scare. This year was exactly 2448 plus 2448 years, or 4,896 years of the ancient American Olmec calendar. 2448 being the same as our 1447 BC, when the great disasters in Egypt caused the exodus of Israel. This was also the year 1260 of the Coptic calendar. 1,260 years of the Christian Egyptian Coptic calendar when this happened. This is important, guys, because in this year of 1524, a lot of people made their exodus from the construct. A lot of women were accused of witchcraft. They were killed, tortured, died in nunneries. They died in dungeons, burned at the stake, executed. In addition to that, these were all Christian women. A whole bunch of these people just exited the construct throughout Europe, but it was attached not only to uh, uh this predicted end time event in 1524 that didn't happen, but a lot of suicides happened as well because all these people had donated everything and willed it all to the church thinking they were about to check out, and nothing ever happened. It was all a farce. And when 1524 went by, they were left with no cattle, no gardens, no estates, no animals. They had signed everything over to the church. Do you think in 1525 the church gave them their shit back? That was 1260, 1260 of the Coptic calendar. Remember, 1260 is also a countdown in the book of Revelation for for evil being unleashed on the earth, 1260 days. Days being years often in the biblical eschatology. So we move on to the very next year, 1525. The burning times continue. This was precisely 2300 of the Olympiad calendar, meaning this was 46 jubilees of 50 years each since the Greek Olympiad calendar had begun. Charles V of Spain ordered the expulsion of all Muslim Moors from the territories of Aragon by the year 1526. This was a huge move. The Europeans were taking back their country. They were expelling all the Muslim Moors. How did the Muslim Moors come into power in Europe? Because the Jews brought them into power, financed their war campaigns, opened the city gates, and played treachery to their European hosts. That's why. 1525 is a huge pushback. I mean, a huge Christian European pushback against Islam. 1526, William Tisdale had a passion for the scriptures and sought to provide the English people an English translation of the New Testament, by, which by this date had not been done, a New Testament Bible. In England, he was harried and pursued by the Papists, and he fled to Germany, where he published his English New Testament, the home of the Protestant Reformation. This was the year 1000 of the Anno Domini calendar, the year of our Lord calendar. This is 1000 years after the AD calendar was begun in the year 526. That's really compelling because it's also the year 4340 Anno Pyramid. 4,340 years is 10 judged time periods. This is in biblical chronologist Stephen Jones material. 434 years is a period of judged time, and this is 10 of those periods since the Great Pyramid was built. So something's being unleashed here. Something new, according to the calendrics, something new is entering the construct. We know what it is. It's Bibles available to everybody now. So the year 1527 comes around. In the year 1527, Holy Roman Emperor Charles V had his army sack the city of Rome, initiating a bloody campaign. Many Jews are expelled from Venice, Italy. Europeans in the 1500s now are pushing back. It began with the Europeans expelling all these Jews from their countries. Then the Europeans started finding sea routes to do away with the Jewish trade route. Now we find uh, massive expulsions and violence on Jewish controlled areas, and man, it's going down. The hostility. This isn't what you find in modern history books. They're not telling you what's really politically going down. It is a European-wide anti-Semitic campaign. These aren't isolated incidents as the historical record tries to make it sound. It's not. This is widespread, and it's for good reason. 1528. In the year 1528, King Francis of France began a major building program and renovations throughout the city of Paris. This was a major national project restoring old Paris while also creating a virtually new city with new architectural wonders. This was 414 years, a cursed earth period, before Paris would be destroyed by bombing in World War II. Paris would be obliterated in 1942. That's the 414th year since the new Paris was begun construction. That's very interesting. 414 years is 138 plus 138 plus 138. Three Phoenix periodicities in that time. So also in the year 1528, sweating sickness returned to England. No one really knows what that was. This time it filtering over to the continent into Germany and then throughout all of Europe. So a comet was seen, and Ambrose Pare wrote, it appeared to be of great length and the color of blood. At its summit was visible the figure of a bent arm, holding in its hand a great sword as if ready to strike. Pare describes many dark forms in space traveling with the comet. This comet caused a massive panic in 1528. So the calendrics bear out that something unusual did happen. Let me explain. 1528 was the year 4900 of the Olmec calendar. This is 4,900 years even. So it would be 98 jubilees of 50 years each. This is the ancient American Olmec calendar, so perhaps a lot happened in the Americas as well. This is also the year 2070 of the Buddhist calendar. Remember, this is the Buddhist. It's almost like a Christian calendar, but this is the Buddhist calendar. 2070. Well, Paris, listen, Paris, the renovation of Paris began a 414-year period of time here, which is a Phoenix number divisible by 138. But this was also 2070 years of the Buddhist calendar. This is the year 2070 of the Buddhist calendar. 2070 is 414 times 5, meaning 2070 is divisible by 138 as well. So the calendrics match up. Pretty interesting. This comet was a big deal. And the next year is 1529. The Turks continue spreading into Europe, but at Vienna, their advance is stopped by European forces. A lot of pushback here between the Turks and the Europeans. Europeans are on the rise. Yeah, because of Jewish intrigues and treachery, Islam was allowed to make a lot of inroads into Europe, but the Europeans are now taking their nations back. They're dealing with both problems. 1530. In the year 1530, on June 25th, the Confession of Augsburg was conducted, which officially began the Protestant Reformation of Christianity in Germany, a literal revolt against the Roman Church authority. This date is 153 times 10. This is 1530. It's 153 times 10. Remember, 153 is the geometrical value for sons of God. It is a number that is found in the New Testament as a Christian number, 153. It's a sum long associated with early Christianity. Almost immediately, the Roman Church retaliated, and many years of intrigues and violence ensued. Also in this year of 1530, the Muslim Quran was published using the printing press in Venice, Italy, even before any copies of the Quran were published in any Islamic country. Do you hear what's being said here? Rome published a copy of the Quran using a printing press long before any Muslim country ever got a copy of the Quran, a printed copy of the Quran. All theirs were handwritten. So the calendrics are interesting for 1530. I've already showed you it's 153 times 10, but it's also 576 years before Armageddon. 576 is 144 times 4. Fibonacci number. This is 576 before the return of the chief cornerstone. It is 576 years before 2106 AD, the 6,000th year, when this controversy is going to be done. This is also, remember, the Germans are now leaving the Roman system. This is an exodus. So we're not surprised to find, what is it, 24, 48. Oh, that's different. No, this was, well, that's totally wrong. Yeah, this is an exodus. There's no doubt this is an exodus, but the Germans who used the phoenix on their standards, like Prussians and stuff, they all use phoenix on their heraldry. It is interesting because this is the 4,968th year since the Anunnaki arrival, the appearance of Enki, the benefactor, in 3439 BC. Excuse me, before the flood, the Gihon flood. Remember, Genesis called them the sons of God. When the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and a new race was born, great men of renown, heroes. So it's interesting that 1530 AD, the number sons of God, 153 times 10, 10 being the number of completion, is also aligned perfectly with 4,968 years of the Anuna arrival in 3439 BC, when the sun, according to Genesis, the sons of God arrived in the days of Enosh. That's very compelling because 4968 is divisible by 138. It is the number 2484 plus 2484. And remember, in the writings of Aristarchus, we find that he believed that every 2484 years the world was destroyed. What he didn't know is it was a phoenix number divisible by 138. So here we have some pretty compelling stuff about. Remember, Phoenix also, when the Phoenix appears, there's also records of great religious reforms and religious changes and calendar changes. And that's exactly what we find right here. It's exactly what we find right here. The Reformation is a huge change from the Roman system of Christianity. 1531, the very next year, the Spanish conquistador Pizarro arrived in South America among the Inca. These are the Quiche people, a people who reacted to the presence of white men with the same dread that the Aztecs experienced. Inca king Huáscar of Peru related an ancient prophecy of the coming of white men, which his own father had told him, a prediction passed down for generations that foretold that in the reign of the 13th Inca, white men of strength, surpassing their own, would come from the east and hold dominion over them. A variant of this tradition was the prophecy of Kilam Balam, known throughout the Yucatan at this time, which foretold at the end of the 13th age, when the Inca was at the height of power, the signal of God would appear in the heavens, and the cross with which the world was enlightened will be manifested. There will be variants of men's will in future times when this signal shall be brought. Receive your bearded barbarian guests from the east. This is no doubt, guys, no doubt, that this is a corrupted, Christianized version rewritten by the Spanish. But the signal of God in the skies was a comet. The coming of the white men was intriguing to the Inca, for they recalled vividly the tales of their forefathers that claimed that the megalithic architecture in South America were the work of white auburn-haired men who had lived thousands of years previously. These may have been Phoenicians or Iberians, the same race of white bearded men. They maintain a vast network of stone roads that the Inca had also maintained for a long time after their disappearance. The arrival of the Spanish was not peaceful, though, for even the Spanish chroniclers wrote that the conquistadors had raped over 5,000 Inca women. The signal of God that the Inca witnessed was perceived to be Halley's Comet, which was seen in this year. Nostradamus witnessed Halley's Comet, known then as the Great Comet, and also recorded by Appian. An earthquake at Lisbon, Portugal, killed 30,000 people in 1531. Lisbon, Portugal has problems, guys. This is only the first large destruction. 30,000 people is not a lot, not a small amount of people to die. So in 1531 is the year. This is the year found written on the Orontius Phineas map, which clearly shows Antarctica with running rivers and completely ice free. After the comet appeared, a Dutch dike failed and resulted with the tragic drowning of 400,000 people. That's incredible. Incredible. So, mm, that's just terrible. All right. Now, that's all in 1531. It was very action-packed year. So we moved to 1532. In the year 1532, the Inca Huáscar is overthrown by Atahualpa, who then becomes the Inca of the Quiche, people of South America in Peru. Atahualpa is considered an illegitimate son, and his seat was at Cuzco. Francisco Pizarro of Spain imprisoned Atahualpa and ransomed him back to the people for gold and silver all around them. The requirements being that he be able to fill a certain chamber with it. The locals complied, stripping their facades and their temples. Guys, the Peruvians did not value silver and gold as currency. To them, it was just ornament. Peru was the ancient Old Testament land of Ophir, Peru, where the scriptures claim was located much gold. In custody, Atahualpa learned how to play chess and speak Spanish, and the officers under Pizarro were enraged when Pizarro went back on his word to the people and strangled Atahualpa to death after he received the requested gold and silver. Pedro de Cieza de Leon in his chronicles wrote that the megalithic city of Tiahuanaco in the Andes Mountains of Peru, which we know of was destroyed in 1687 BC during the Ogygian deluge, had great doors of immense stone amazingly wrought, for the doorway with their jambs, lintels, and thresholds were all a single stone. Guys, that's impossible today. We don't have any technology that can do that today. So he expressed his amazement and failed to understand how this was possible. This is exactly what our archaeologist Porter found in the colossal remains of architecture at Bashan, the land of the Old Testament giants called the Rephaim. Huge doors all made out of single stone, jambs, lintels, and thresholds all together. At Tiwanaku were excavated statues of men with 6 fingers on their hands and 6 toes on their feet. You don't read about any of this in modern books about excavations at Tiwanaku. You get all the standard BS about their calendar and Lucar Mata, the pyramid, and how they've rebuilt it, and Lake Titicaca and Pumapunka. You don't get all this. This is all the original archaeological reports that were coming out with the Spanish found. Every bit of that's been sanitized from the modern historical record. 6 finger giants and six toes on all their feet. It's crazy. Now, actual humanoid skeletons with 6 fingers and toes have been found. See 1891. This is in my notes right here. See the year 1891. All right. A comet is also seen over Europe in the year 1532. However, the 1531 date disrupts the perfect orbit, while 1532 is closer to Halley's Comet's periodicity. What you guys probably don't know, some of you do if you've read Charles Fort, is that Halley's Comet is not fixed in stone. They don't really know the periodicity. There was a lot of hubbub in 1910 when Halley's Comet didn't really show. It's just crazy. There's been multiple times in history where Halley's Comet was expected, it did not show. And then there's other times when it showed, but it was a year off. So people believing automatically, just because Halley's Comet was seen by people in 1986 does not mean that we have the perfect periodicity for Halley's Comet. It's an anomaly. It does not seem to stay fixed at 75 or 76 years. All right. So, oh, shit, excuse me, guys. Coffee wearing off on me. All right. At this date, the great cultures of South America were the Quiche, the Inca, the language spoken from Quito to the southern confines of the empire around Cuzco and to the east of Lake Titicaca. Aymara was the language of Colao, I believe, Callao, the region northwest, west, and south of Lake Titicaca. The Kimu were a large and powerful nation formerly on the northern coast of Peru. For those of you who don't know, I have information on the Kimu. They were wiped out in the Phoenix phenomenon, but that was prior to this period. Pizarro and 190 conquistadors landed at Tumbes. The Quiche Inca Empire, which extended across Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, and Chile, fell to just 190 men. Again, it was their belief system. Kidnapping Atahualpa, holding him for ransom, then killing him and all that, that's not. Oh, guys, the Inca could have easily overwhelmed the Spanish. There was a lot more going on here. Believe me, they still most of the people were terrified of the Spanish and their silver shining armor and all that. They still held to the traditions of Viracocha and Votan, the returning bearded gods. So just like Hernan Cortez bought into an ancient American prophecy of the return of a bearded god, so did the uh, so did the Inca, which makes us wonder, is this a psyop? What I mean is in ancient historical times, did a forethinking group of people say, hey, we're going to be coming back here sometime in the future. It may be our descendants are going to want to come out here and get more stuff and whatever. Why don't we go ahead and invent a religion that will more easily allow us to take what we need in the future? It almost sounds like a psyop, guys, that to create this religion. The bearded benefactor gods will return because look what it did. We have to judge things by their effects. What did it do? It allowed 600 conquistadors to take down the Aztec Empire because of their belief that a god had returned. Same thing by the Inca. So, yeah, guys, I don't believe in coincidence. This sounds more like a program that a syllabus that was deliberately put out. Heard my phone go off. Well, I heard it. It sounds more like a syllabus in a lot of tree planting. We just don't know. We just don't know. All right. So that was 1532. Now we get to the year 1533, and we are by far not done with this video, guys. European records tell of a bright comet in this year of 1533. It was observed by Copernicus, excuse me. Now, Ivan the Fourth is born. He later becomes Ivan the Terrible. He's a Russian czar who idolized Vlad the Impaler. Now, um, he may not have been born at this date. He may have become crown prince on this date. And he was 3 years old when he became crown prince. So he may have been born in 1530 and he became crown prince right here. So that may have been because I have other notes from 1547 where I say that he was 17 years old. So yeah, so that may be it. But anyway, he enters the historical record. This is Ivan the Terrible of Russia. Now, uh, by 1533, the Spanish had already raped about 5,000 Aymara women in South America, all in this one year. This is the spreading of the Spanish gene pool in the Americas. This too sounds like part of the campaign. 1534. In the year 1534, King Henry VIII of England passed the Act of Supremacy, which made the King of England the head of the English Church instead of the papacy of Rome. What's happening here, guys? Remember, European Christians are now coming together. They're fed up with the Jews. They're fed up with Jewish intrigues. They're fed up with all this stuff because now the Roman Church has started their bullshit. The Roman Church copied the Jewish intrigues. The Roman Church took the Templars out. When they took the Templars out, they adopted all the Templar and Jewish practices. Rome literally became what the rest of Europe didn't want. They see it. They see what's going on. So now European powers are coming into their own, and they're pushing back against the Jews, the Jewish banking system, the Jewish slave system, the Jewish trade routes system, the Jewish political systems of the Turks using the Muslims and the Turks against the Europeans as bargaining chips. They're pushing back the Muslims and the Turks. Well, now look, now Rome's getting pushed back from Germany, the Protestant Reformation. Now look right here, the British get involved. King Henry VIII literally overturned Roman power in the English Empire. This is what's happening. Rome is basically being attacked from all sides. The papacy. So he began closing monasteries and confiscating church property, inadvertently giving rise to Protestantism in England, though this was not his intent. Nostradamus predicted an outbreak of the plague, but his teachers, resenting his rising popularity for his successful cures and outspoken unorthodox theories, resented his acumen and were in essence his worst opponents. But the plague did return, and in the exact year that he predicted it. Nostradamus further foretold that a bright light would appear in the heavens in 1572, and accordingly, in the year 1572, a nova startled the world with its magnificence for months. He described and dated the Great Fire of London in the year 1666, and accurately described modern tanks, planes, submarines, aerial combat, time bombs, the emergence of Western nations across the sea, America, and its war against the East, as well as radio, television, sea vessels made of iron, unheard of in his day, and even declared that sometime after the Anno Domini year of 1997, a great prophet will arise in Christendom, a new priest who will reform and revitalize the entire structure of the Christian faith. He compiled a chronology of Earth history and that deduced the period from Adam to Jesus to be 3,962 years. Guys, this is amazing because this is only 35 years off the mark. Counting from Adam's banishment in 3895 BC, the Adam and Eve reset, year one, Annus Mundi, to the year of the crucifixion event in 33 AD. He also deduced that from Noah to Abraham was 1080 years. And amazingly, remember 1080, guys, 1080 years was when the Great Pyramid was built. 1080 years. Noah, uh, uh, 2815 BC, right before the birth of Noah, was the year 1080. Now, uh, so amazingly, from Noah's 13th year alive to Abraham's death was 1080 years. So Nostradamus keeps nailing it. In this year, Ignatius Loyola founded the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, agents of the Roman Catholic Church. The Jesuits are specifically created as an assassin intelligence apparatus for the Pope in order to fight back against all this resistance to the power of Rome. The fall of Roman church power in England was precisely 480 years after the division of the Roman power in 1054. Why is this significant, guys? 1054, the Roman power divided between the Eastern Orthodox Greek and the Latin Roman papacy. Two powers of Rome appeared. This is what happened in 1054. But what else happened in 1054? A supernova happened in that year, which created what we know of today as the Crab Nebula, a supernova. What happened right here? What happened right here, guys? What did I just read to you happened? Oh, just now, a supernova was predicted by the prophet Nostradamus, and it happened in the exact year. So we have in the calendars, we have all these parallels that are very interesting, guys, and how Nostradamus nailed all these time periods from history. So it's interesting. Now there's one in here I did not mention, but it's in a letter to his son Caesar. Nostradamus mentions that before the flood, there was a 1242-year period. That's interesting because that also is divisible by 138. 1242 is a Phoenix number. And of course, he mentions the year 1903. He mentions the Phoenix. And as I've shown multiple times in my published books and videos, Nostradamus dates the next Phoenix phenomenon episode to the month of May of the year 2040, and even has the number 138 encoded in his quatrains. I've showed all that. So we get to the year 1536. In the year 1536, John Calvin published his Institutes of the Christian Religion, the first Protestant textbook. He is most famous for his belief in predestination, that the future redemption of the elect was already set a long time ago before the past was even begun. It's called Calvinism. Still popular today. Still real popular today. So this is also the year 1460 of the Saka calendar. The Saka calendar is an ancient Israelite Indian calendar. I've got more further back in my chronicon. I explained the Saka calendar, but yeah, it's The Saka calendar started a whole new socio-political calendar 1,460 years earlier. For those of you who are curious about 1460, 1460 is exactly 365 years times four. So you guys have heard of it as the Egyptian Sothic cycle. 1538. 2 years later is 1538. Nostradamus was witness to the overnight creation of a volcanic mountain in Naples. Here is an admission in the historical record that a mountain can appear overnight. That's pretty scary. In 1539, the King of England's chief minister, Thomas Cromwell, commissioned an English translation of the scriptures called the Great Bible. The resistance continues. Remember, Rome could not stand the fact that the Bible was available to the common people because they had lied so many times. 1540. In the year 1540, the Jews are expelled from Italy. This is the Pope doing this. Also, in Italy, Paul III formally authorizes the existence of the Jesuits. They were created earlier, but now in 1540, they are absolutely ratified. Their position is secure. They're financed by the Pope. Remember, these are intelligence agents and assassins for the Pope. These are the Jesuits. What I find really interesting is even in the calendrics, this is the year 1584 Roman Julian. This is this is a Roman power. The Pope is a Roman power. This is Rome creating this order of Jesuits, these wicked, evil perpetrators of so many conspiracies, even today. When they were brought officially into existence was 1584 years after the Roman Julian calendar. 1584 is 792 plus 792 years. 792 is the periodicity of the Nemesis X object. Nothing good ever happens when Nemesis appears. Also in 1540, Peter Appian, in his Astronomicon Caesarium, published in this year, remarked that comet tails always point away from the sun. He had studied the comet of 1531. Spanish miners searching for silver and gold traces near Callao, Peru, removed earth in a deep mine shaft and were surprised to discover an entombed wooden ship of extreme antiquity, unlike any with which they were familiar. For other unusual discoveries of ships underground, see 1503, which we just did, and the year 1460. 365 times 4. The year 1541, Mercator built a map of the world in the form of a globe. Now, in my notes, because I wrote this almost 20 years ago, the most accurate of its kind at the time. I no longer believe we live on a globe, but that's okay. It's in my notes. 1542. Pope Paul III, in 1542, Pope Paul III revived the Inquisition, calling it the Congregation of the Inquisition, or Roman Inquisition, with the chief aim to crush the spirit and spread of Protestantism in Italy. Portuguese explorers reached Japan by sailing around Africa and on through the Arabian and Indian seas and around China through Indonesia for the very first time. England joins the horrible practice of burning witches, the brutal torture and killing of women. This was predicted by Mother Shipton, named Ursula Southhill. born in 1488. In the 194 years of English insanity, they would burn to death about 30,000 females. This was much lesser than those burned on the continent. This was the 476th year since the Norman invasion and takeover of England. That was 1066 when the Normans invaded. Remember, for those of you who follow my Chronicon, there's a number that belongs to the descendants of Greeks. That these epics and ages are all 476 years apart. 1543. 1543 AD. Nicholas Copernicus published his Concerning the Revolution of the Heavenly Bodies, wherein he attacked the church propagated belief in the geocentric universe. In his heliocentric system, he provides evidence that Earth was not the center of creation or the center of the solar system, but just another planet orbiting a star. The Catholic priest himself, he had refused to publicize his findings because of the oppressive censorship of the church, fearing retribution through the Inquisition. The forced ignorance was ridiculous and damaging. Aristarchus, having 18 centuries earlier already proposed that Earth moved around the sun. Now, Martin Luther said the sun never did shine on a more bloodthirsty and revengeful people as they, the Jews. That's a direct quote from Protestant Reformation spearheader Martin Luther. He specifically said that about the Jews. The sun never did shine on a more bloodthirsty and revengeful people. That's a powerful statement, guys. So the papacy decrees in this year that the tradition of the church have some authority, have the same authority as scripture. Listen, the Roman papacy in this year of 1543 declared that the church edict have just as much authority as scripture. Wow. That's crazy, guys. That's crazy. So yeah, this the Roman church believed that Earth was the center of everything. Now, as a simulationist, I can see how the Romans would feel that because the Earth doesn't move. Everything, all movement is the sky. The Earth itself is stationary. So, but all the movement is in the sky is specifically designed with curvature to show the intelligent observer that you're orbiting around the sun. I don't believe we're orbiting around the sun because I'm a simulationist and I understand that the sky sim was designed specifically to deceive basically intelligent people in believing that they're orbiting a star. It's all by deception. The whole sky lies. Holographic. So 1546. Uh, well, no, that should have been eliminated from the notes. There's nothing that happened in 1546. That's an old model. All right, 1547. Ivan the Fourth. This is Ivan the Terrible. Ivan the Fourth name. I believe it's Vasilyevich. Vasilyevich. Ivan the Fourth name Vasily. Oh my God, I'm not Russian. Vasilyu. Vasilyevich the Terrible is crowned as Russia's first Tsar. He is age 17. Ivan the Terrible idolized Vlad the Impaler and emulated him by having enemies and political dissidents impaled. He invented cruel tortures and he nailed the hats on the heads of foreign emissaries. If a foreign emissary arrived to his court with something that he didn't want to hear, he literally had his men go hold the dude down and they nailed his hat to his head and sent him back. Pretty sure they all died. All right. So Ivan the Terrible, you have to understand the Jews hated the Russians with a passion. So This is a hats off video. Hats off. But according to Ivan the Terrible, hats on. And he nailed those bastards down to make sure. So there's a lot more to the story behind the scenes, guys. There's a lot to these traditions. The man did not just make up something like that. It had meaning to it. Yeah. We knew about the tiny hats even back then. Let's see. Oh, 1547. Okay, now we get to 1551. Sweating sickness. Again, it's unknown what it was. Sweating sickness returned to London, England again, and then it quickly dies out, but it returns again later. Oh, wait a minute. This is the last time. It was 3 times sweating sickness returned. Guess what, guys? It does not return again until the year 2012. It's a long time. That's a huge time. That's like 400, almost 370 years or so. So 1552. Ellis Gruffydd died about 62 years old. He is the author of Chronicle of the World, National Library of Wales, manuscript 52760. I have not read this book, but I need it. If you're listening to me and you have access to this book, if there's a translation in English, I need this book. Chronicle of the World in Wales, National Library of Wales, manuscript 52760. Wow. His name is Ellis Gruffydd, Elis, and his last name is Gruffydd. Chronicle of the World. Man, I need that book. He died in 1552, which is a phoenix. It's phoenix related because it's 1,000 plus a phoenix cycle, 552 years. I sure need that book. So the very following, well, no, it's 2 years later, is 1554. 1554 is very unique because it's 777 plus 777 years. Now, the calendrics for this year is mind blowing. We'll get to it in a minute. Let's find out what happened in this year before we go through the calendrics. 1554 AD. For a little clarity, let's get this absolutely precise. Let's get it precise. 1554. We're talking about 469 years ago. That's a long time, guys. 469 years ago, Pope Julius III ordered that the Jewish Talmud be burned everywhere. The calendrics for this date are mind blowing. So here's the Pope. The Pope of Rome orders that all Jewish Talmuds be burned everywhere. Solomon Romano burnt many thousands of Hebrew scrolls for the Inquisition. In England, the Catholic Queen Mary, later called Bloody Mary, announced that she would soon begin cleansing England of heretics. This meant Protestants. In 1555, she would indeed try to do just this. This year, but right here in this year of 1554, when she made that announcement, this year was 1,000 years after the founding of the imperial restoration of the Roman Empire by Justinian in the year 554. So, in the year 554, this is the 1,000th year after you got to understand why that's important, because in 554 the Justinians, the Roman Emperor Justinian's imperial restoration of the Roman Empire was a very real thing. What had just happened? 25-year darkness started in 522 AD. The Justinian plagues, earthquakes, volcanoes, the Dark Ages began. All this, and it took all the way to 554 before the restoration of the Roman Empire began. So that's real interesting because it fits perfectly with all the Phoenix data. So this is 1,000 years after the restoration. Now a comet appeared over Europe, inspiring awe and fear. Further, the crescent moon ejected a bright arrow of flame into the night sky. So clearly in 1554, there were some strange things happening in the sky and in the calendars. Also in 1554, Gerardus Mercator published the Great Map of Europe, correcting many of the cartographic mistakes of his predecessors. Mercator's research included not merely the size, shape, and distribution of the Earth's land masses, but also its history. Mercator amassed a tremendous amount of historical data and compiled a history of the world using the astronomical records of civilizations spanning back to distant antiquity, a chronology linking different dating systems and methods of the Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, Romans, and others. Mercator's Great Map of Europe actually exhibited those geographical areas that were then in 1554 occupied by the descendants of the migrating Israelites, this being exactly 3,000 years after the Exodus of Israel in 1447 BC. Also preceded by a comet, and is in 1554, this year here is also 2484 years or 414 times 6, a phoenix divisible by 138. 2448 years after Israel became a nation independent of Judah in 931 BC. Interestingly, the Israelites in Egypt lived in Goshen, the region surrounding the Great Pyramid complex in Egypt, the Great Pyramid being the pre-flood world's prime meridian, or 0-degree longitude and latitude. Because of an archaic worldwide pole shift cataclysm, the Giza complex now lies at 30 degrees north latitude, above the equator. Mercator's map was published exactly 552 years before Armageddon, a phoenix cycle, or 138 years times 4, phoenix number. Not only is this number 552 encoded in the chronometry of the Great Pyramid very prominently, but Nostradamus was aware of phoenix cycles and was cognizant that Phoenix would destroy the entire Western world. So 552 years after this date is 2106 AD, the 6,000th year, the descent of the chief cornerstone. So, let's see. In April of 1554, the secretary of Nostradamus, Eugene Im de Chavigny, began transcribing the prophecies of Nostradamus as the French Jewish prophet directed him. This collection was called The Centuries, and it fully details the major depopulations of the world in disasters in the exact years of 2040 and 2046. This Nostradamus's prophecies, they were finished, edited, and put into book form in this year. 552 years of Phoenix cycle before the return of the chief cornerstone, the year 6000, 2106 AD. So 1554 CE, this year we're talking about right now, is also 5448 Annus Mundi, the height of the Great Pyramid without the chief cornerstone. Remember, the height of the Great Pyramid with the chief cornerstone is 5814 inches. This is 5,448 inches. So the chief cornerstone is not present and will not return until Armageddon, 552 years after this year of 1554. You can't make this up, guys. The calendrics are amazing. They're amazing. You just can't make this stuff up. So let's see. Let's see. Interested. Let's see where am I at. Interestingly, in the same year, Conrad Gessner finished his monumental work, Bibliotheca Universalis, 4 huge volumes, like the 4 faces of the Great Pyramid, which contained a catalog of all the writings that have ever been compiled in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek, listing over 1,800 authors and the titles of their works, even providing summaries of the text. For this epic achievement, Gessner was called the father of bibliography. In 1554, a method for extracting silver from medium grade ores was perfected in Mexico. So, but later in 1563, Mercator would visit the Great Pyramid and even write the date of his visit on the stone structure itself. I envy him. I envy that dude. So the calendars for this year are just awesome. Nostradamus's prophecies are published. It's these men put a bibliography together of all the known texts in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek, which is 1,800 in text known at that time. This is 469 years ago. They put this together. Mercator puts together not only a map of the world, but a history of the world, citing all kinds of stuff. I do not have access to that history. This is another thing that I would love to have for my library. If there was an English translation of Mercator's history of the world, oh man, I would love it. I know there's some gemstones in there I would find. So there's that. So the calendrics, like I got into the calendrics already. This is the year 5448 Annus Mundi, which is the height of the Great Pyramid. It is also 552 years before Armageddon, which is a number found. I just recently did a video on YouTube that shows the number 552 in rectilinear inches everywhere in the Great Pyramid. And here it is right here. So this is also 6,792 years since the Nemesis Cataclysm, which began our whole deal. It is 5239 BC starts the Anuna Nur chronology of 600-year periods. Well, 6,000 plus 792 years, the Nemesis X number. Oh, this is also 3,792 years, which is 3,000 plus the Nemesis X number after the Great Flood. This is also the 3,000th year after the Exodus. Why is this important? Because the ancient Israelites were prophesied to become the 10 toes of iron mixed with a what is it? Uh, Something dirty iron mixed with clay or something. I can't remember, but it's the 10 toes on the statue of Nebuchadnezzar. And here is 3,000 years of history after the Exodus. The Israelites are all firmly planted in European countries, and now they're emerging in 1554. Now they're growing exponentially. So, uh, this is also the 2448th year, 130. This is divisible by 138. It's 2,484 years since Israel divorced Judah in 931 BC and just got away from the Jews. So, let's see. Yeah, that's covers that year. So we get to the year 1555. 1555, Catholic Queen Mary has over 300 Protestants burned at the stake as heretics in London, a largely unpopular move. Gunpowder was put in the fire so the victims would die quickly. Cardinal Cardinal Pole affirmed in Parliament that Britain was the first of all nations to receive the Christian faith, an assertion made by others before, like Virgil and Polydore. Pope Paul IV condemned Jewish usury and anti Christian activities. So the Rome is at war with the Jews. The Jewish takeover of the papacy in the Vatican has not happened yet. Well, the Rome is still at war with the Rome is still exhibiting anti-Semitic policies. An astrologer named Goricus warned King Henry II, who was then 37, to be aware of death in his 42nd year during the summer. Nostradamus would later warn the king of the exact same thing. Now we get to 1556. On January 23rd, over 800,000 people perished in China by an earthquake at the Shenxi province, principally in Shaanxi. Some estimates place the death toll at 830,000 people. This is in a mainstream book called Natural Disasters on page 50. A comet was recorded by Europeans in April. Now, this is exactly 70 times 7, 490 years before 2046 AD, when millions of people will die in China from earthquakes and throughout all of Asia um, in 2046 with the return of the Nemesis X object. In the calendrics, in the calendrics, this is the year 1080 since the fall of Rome. We don't, for 1556, I don't have any European history for this date. That's a lot of people. 830,000 people dying all at once is a lot. It's a lot. So the year 15, the year 1558. Okay. So what happens in 1558? It's the year, it's we got two interesting calendrics. So a descendant of the Zeno brothers named Rosselli found among the family papers the Zeno map, dated at the year 1380. That's 138 times 10. The date on it is 1380. This Zeno map depicted an ice-free Greenland and certain polar regions. He had the map published in this year of 1558. The date is connected calendarly to the Great Dispersion of humanity in 1899 BC, known as the Babel Dispersion, 3,456 years previously, or the foundation number of 864 times 4. You'd have to read my Anunnaki homeworld to understand the relevance of that number. 864 is the number that bridges seconds, minutes, hours, days, months, and years all together in one time system. As shown abundantly in my Chronicon, 864 is the number that links both space and time. In 1899, BC, the families of the world spread out rapidly after a disaster and the collapse of empire in the Middle East. As traditions concerning that period affirm, many expeditions had been sent previously to map the world and its coasts. Also, in 1558, the military tank was invented, exactly 138 years after the armored wagon. Can't make this stuff up, guys. Also in 1558, Elizabeth, a daughter of Henry VIII, ascends the throne of England and is destined to be one of the greatest enemies of the Roman papacy. She would rule England until 1603. It's a long time. Instantly, the Pope advised her to step down off the throne and submit to his will, but she refused, refusing the papacy its claim of divine right. Remember, they had got caught publishing the donation of Constantine, which was a forgery and later proven by Lorzano or somebody, his name, he proven it was a forgery because in the donation of Constantine, the biblical verses that were quoted in the Latin Vulgate. But in that time of the day of Constantine, when Constantine was alive, the Latin Vulgate didn't exist. That translation of the Bible had not yet come into existence. So they got busted in a lie. But that's the Roman Catholic Church. That's all they do is lie. So during her reign, there would be at least 5 attempts to assassinate Queen Elizabeth, all failing because of the elite Secret Service group that protected her. This is the beginning of basically the British Secret Service right here. Crazy, guys. So we get to the year 1560. In the year 1560, Ivan IV of Russia becomes Ivan the Terrible at the death of his wife, the beautiful Anastasia Romanova, who had won a national competition of virgins to win his attention. In this year was born Erzsébet Bathory of Hungary, popularly known as the infamous Elizabeth of Bathory. Transylvania, Romania. She was born 84 years after the death of Vlad the Impaler. She is infamous for butchering over 600 young girls and bathing in their blood because she believed that the blood of virgins had cosmetic value. It would prolong her youth. She was known as the Blood Countess and was influenced by the still told stories of Vlad Dracul. He died in 1614, and we'll get to that later, but it's really interesting that the Blood Duchess died exactly 138 years after Vlad the Impaler, Vlad Dracul, died. You can't make this stuff up, guys. We live in the holosphere. At this time in 1560, the Roman Church is at war against the Jews. European Christians are pushing back against the Jews and their Muslim allies. This is the world that's developing right here in the 1550s and 1560s. This is the world that you're not told about in the historical records. You're not taught this in junior high, high school, and in college. You're just told what happened. You're never told why all these Jews are being kicked out of all these countries. Why Christopher Columbus was the discoverer of something when he died penniless. You're not told why. When certain people own the publishing companies, you only get certain versions of the data. This is where we are. We stopped this presentation at 1560. All these calendrical anomalies, all these amazing things that are coming to the forefront. The Protestant Reformation is pushing back against the power of Rome. Israelites, the descendants of Israelites, are now taking up their mantles and fighting back. It's a dark history, and it's going to get real interesting as we go along. But I hope these presentations have opened your eyes as to the intrigues, because every bit of this series on the tiny hats, this hats off series, is all done just to explain to you by the time we get to 2023 and 2024 in this presentation, to explain to you with perfect clarity why the world is today, exactly how we got to this state. It's all explained in the historical record when you pay attention to the details. Sorry it took so long to get this video out. Here's another one real quick. And peace out, guys, and hats off.